Morning class 5. Today I'm going to start with a new chapter, Meeting Miss Trotwood. Now, David Copperfield, now that chapter has been taken from this novel, David Copperfield, and this is a novel written by Charles Dickens. So today we're going to read through a chapter from this novel. So you have the book here, that's written by Charles Dickens, that is your David Copperfield. So you can have a look here at the book so that you can read, because we are just going to do a chapter of it. So the remaining is for you to read. It's a very interesting book, David Copperfield. Now, who is the author? It's Charles Dickens, and he was the most popular author that was born in, he was born in London, Portsmouth. He was born in 1812 and he died in 1870. So he was your Charles Dickens, you can see here. Now, what is the theme of this story that is based on? It is based on importance of self, family, home, and friends, because we're going to go through the life history of Charles Dickens. Actually, this David Copperfield is a story based on life of your Charles Dickens. So it is relatable. So it's a real life situation with the characters that he has taken from. Okay, so this is a book that was based on the life of Charles Dickens. Then we have this chapter, Meeting Miss Trotwood. Okay, so in this chapter we see the characters. Your David Copperfield, who is the main hero. Okay, and the book itself is based on this name, David Copperfield. Miss Betsy was Trotwood, who was David Copperfield's aunt. Then you have Mr. Murdstone, who was the stepfather of David Copperfield. And you have Mr. Wickfield, who was the lawyer, okay, of your Miss Betsy Trotwood, that's aunt of David Copperfield. And you have Agnes, who is Mr. Wickfield's daughter. Okay, so children, this story, David Copperfield, is a story of the narrator's life, actually, okay, from his early childhood to adulthood. So his real life situation, okay, is being portrayed here, or it's written by the author Charles Dickens, okay, for his early childhood to adulthood. And David describes all the obstacles he had to overcome in order to acquire peace of mind and economic stability. So as we see, Meeting Miss Trotwood is the the fifth chapter of David Copperfield, okay, if you read to the book, right? So if you look at the book, chapter 1 and 2, where you have, before coming to this chapter, Meeting Miss Trotwood, you have David, a very young, okay, and he enjoys a very happy childhood with his mother and her faithful servant Peggotty, until his mother married, again to Mr. Murdstone. So that's how Mr. Murdstone becomes the stepfather of David Copperfield. Then next, if you come to, then it says here, when David's mother was, alive, he was sent to a boarding school in London. But when his mom dies, he was sent to work at the wine bottling business. Okay, but again, at this time also, David's owner, Mr. Micawber, okay, loses his business, and that's how David now goes to meet his aunt, Miss Trotwood. So I'm going to read to this chapter. Let's read it together, children. Okay, Meeting Miss Trotwood. Now, although his father had died, as I already said, his father was no more, David Copperfield lived happily with his mother until she married Mr. Murdstone, who was the stepfather of your David. And as stepfathers, not a kind man. Mr. Murdstone's equally unkind sister, okay, so he had a sister who had come to live with them. Then David's mother passed away, as well as Mr. Murdstone, and his sister continued ill-treating David, okay? They made him work in a factory instead of sending him to school. So David went in search of his only living relative, his aunt, and she's your Miss Betsy Trotwood. Finally, after walking a long distance, he reached her house. So now let's read the story to see what happened next. Now this is how he describes how he reached his aunt's place. I had walked every step of the way, sleeping under haystacks at night. Fortunately, it was summer. So yes, luckily it was summer, because he had to sleep under your haystacks. And if it was raining, you can imagine what would have happened to him. My shoes were completely worn out. It was all torn. And my hat was crushed and battered. That battered meaning shabby and all damaged. My shirt and trousers stained all with salt, becomes all dirty with heat, because with the heat he's all perspiring. So the heat, then dew Okay, that's the water that gets there, and grass, and the soil on which I had slept. So you can see how he had made his journey, okay, until he reached his aunt's place. Might have frightened the birds from my aunt's garden. So he was looking very shabby, very dirty, okay, no one could recognize him. As I stood at the gate, my hair had known no comb. He had not combed his hair or brushed since I left London. In this condition, I waited to introduce myself to my aunt. As I stood there, a lady came out of the house with a handkerchief over her cap and a pair of gardening gloves on her hands. I was sure she was Miss Betsy from her walk. Okay, so look at the sentence. As I was sure she was Miss Betsy, that means he had never met his aunt, Miss Betsy, earlier. Okay, because he had come to know about his aunt from his mother, who had often described her to me. That's what he says. Go away, said Miss Betsy, shaking her head. Go along. No boys here. I watched her as she marched to a corner of the garden, and then I softly and stood beside her. If you please, ma'am, if you please, aunt, I'm your nephew. So you have the masculine gender, okay, of niece, nephew. Oh Lord, said my aunt, and sat flat in the garden path. That means she was shocked to see when a young boy comes and tells her aunt. She was shocked to know that. I'm David Copperfield of Blunderstone in Suffolk, where you came when I was born. So he says, yeah, when I was born, you had come there. And so then I remember you because my mother used to always speak about you. I have been very unhappy since my mother died. I have been taught nothing and made to work instead of being sent to school. So you can see how he had been exploited by his stepfather. Okay, he was not sent to school, but then he had to work in your wine bottling factory. And because of that, he had to run away. It made me run away to you, and have walked all the way and have not slept in bed since I began the journey. Here my self-control gave way and I burst into tears. So now he is in the hands and in the arms of Miss Trotwood as aunt, and so now he could not control his emotions any longer. So therefore he starts crying. My aunt got up in a great hurry and took me into the house. The first thing my aunt did was to give me lots of strange tasting tonics. Tonics are medicinal liquids, okay, that gives energy because he has been walking for so long, okay, a long distance to meet his aunt, and therefore he was all tired. Therefore his aunt gives him that tasting tonics. Then she heated a bath for me. Okay, children, so I stop here for today. Please read through it, understand, and you can also read the chapter for yourself if you want to, but I'm going to come tomorrow again, okay, with the reading. And so underline the difficult words and non-stop reading. Thank you, children.